Hello, everybody. We're just waiting for everyone to pop in and then we'll get started. So I guess I'll start by just saying, of course, welcome to everybody, but I'm going to share my screen so you could see where you could find Ask Birdie on our website. So it's right here where it says learn more, and it's Birdie's advice column. And then you could just put in your email, ask a question, and the appropriate therapist will respond. I'll show that at the end as well for everyone that's coming in. So I'm going to welcome everyone for coming in. We'll get started. My name is Evie, and I'm working with the marketing team, and I'm your co-host with our wonderful panel. And I'll introduce our panel, and we have our social worker, Leah Renfrew, our speech therapist, Andrea Levy, and our OT, Amy Morton. Hi, ladies. They will take over, and please ask a question in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll just unmute yourself and we'll ask. Let's get started.
Yeah, so this panel is honestly just kind of any questions that you've been thinking about. And our Ask Birdie is an anonymous advice column. So if there's, any questions, I know I'm a parent myself, and sometimes I'm like, I should know this answer, but I don't want to say anything. So it is anonymous. And so you can type your question in, and then the appropriate discipline will respond. So right now, it would be a great time to ask anything, thinking about like OT, speech, social work, which is like more like those social skills for your kiddos. So yeah, any questions that you guys have, or any topics that you guys want to, do an open chat about, we'd be happy to share. I know that I am in the kindergarten classroom right now, and a lot of our kiddos are moving on to a different setting. And I've not been nervous, but I've been like anxious for them because they've been with us for so long. And so I know that, in this springtime, closer to summer, we're kind of always talking about transition. So if anyone has any questions on transitions or what Bluebird looks like in the summer, especially now that we're hopefully kind of inching out of the pandemic, I'll knock on wood. So.
And I can go ahead and get started with a question that I get a lot from parents, or something that kind of happens a lot within starting therapy services. And that is, what is occupational therapy? Some of you might already know what that is, but I get that from families. I get that from people I meet. Nobody really knows what an occupational therapist does. So if you take the word occupation, and instead of thinking of something you get paid for, thinking of it as anything that you do during the day. So, you woke up, you made breakfast, you got dressed, you drove to work, and then you worked, and then you worked out or didn't work out and watched TV. Those are occupations. And so an occupational therapist works on all of those skills. So for our kids, a lot of those skills are play and beginning of self-care. So sometimes it may seem like all we do is these sensory related things, but it kind of includes all of those different occupations.
I can also chime in about kind of what social work looks like at Bluebird. I'll be the first one to admit, I feel like social work, people think like, oh, CPS or something like that. But social work is a really, really broad discipline. And so you can kind of pepper yourself into like several different types of environments. And so at Bluebird, we're really focusing on social emotional development. And the research shows that kids, especially pediatrics, they need to know those social emotional learning techniques before they're able to get that cognitive stuff going on. So for instance, like, yes, we want our kiddos to know their numbers and letters and shapes, but if they can't sit at the table with a group of 4 or 5 kiddos, then they're not going to be able to get to that next step. So in our social work rotations, we really focus on those social skills. So sharing, taking turns, a lot of joint attention, and just like being aware that other kiddos are in the room with us and where our body is in the room. Really just getting used to the idea of being in a group setting. And then for kindergarten, as our kiddos kind of, sorry, my dog is, as our kiddos continue on, then that's when we're focusing on emotion identification, coping skills, self-regulation, and so forth. So that's kind of what social work looks like right now at Bluebird.
No, that sounds great, Leah. So I have a question from Stephanie. What are some of your best tips for students and parents who are new to Bluebird?
I feel like the best tip is welcome. Like, we're so glad you joined us. One of the biggest things is anytime you can meet with your team, or anytime that you can meet with different therapists or ask questions, like, please let us provide more information so that you can kind of know a little bit more about your kid, as well as what's happening here. So anytime you have those progress reports or opportunities to talk with people, we would love to know a little bit more about life, how life goes for you, but then also to see if there's any strategies we can give you to help at the home.
So we have another question from Hope. Hello, my son is having a little bit of separation anxiety when it comes to me and dad leaving the house at all. He's currently going from virtual to in person. How can I prepare him for summer session and being away from us? Good question.
A great question. We always send home social stories before children come back to the clinic, and I'll have pictures of the teachers that he will work with and the different rooms that he will go to. So I would recommend reading that story with him at home before he comes to Bluebird, and even just taking a look at our website and showing him pictures of the teachers on there. Just really talking about what he's going to see beforehand can be really helpful. And also just getting him really excited and just being really super positive about it.
And I think also it's very normal for the first 2 weeks of drop off to be really hard. And a lot of times it's harder on the parent than it is on the child, even though it might seem like, he or she is in so much distress. We have so many tools and resources to use to help them with that transition. And I've never met a Bluebird kiddo who after 2-3 weeks can't transition right back in. So it's hard at the beginning, but they definitely get used to it right away.
I think also too, maybe even bringing in a transitional object, like some preferred stuffed animal from home, could also be helpful as well.
And there is on our website, there's I think we still have it, where it's like a 3D where you can literally, depending on your site, click on the different rooms. So you can kind of go through that virtually, just so, sometimes knowing what to expect is really helpful for that transition. Kind of funny.
Yeah, that's great, Amy. We do have that virtual tour on the website. So yeah, for all 3 locations. So that's a great tool. Never even thought about that. Just to remind them.
Thank you, guys. I was just saying thank you for answering.
No, you're welcome. So the next question is from Roberta, and she says she's wondering if Christian he'll be going to another school and he'll turn 8 at the end of February. Can he stay at Bluebird?
Do you mean, Roberta, for extended day? Like how kind of some of Christian?
I mean, for the one-on-one session in the afternoon.
Yeah, so I know in that pod specifically, some of his friends were doing after school sessions.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So we can definitely talk about that. That is something that we offer at North Center, and I can put in a note for Aaron to contact you to talk about that for come like summer or fall, whenever he's transitioning.
Yeah, because I know that the deadline is 8 years old, no, to be bird, and I don't know. It's why I was asking. As is in the middle, not perfect. We are ready. Thank you, as usual.
For everyone that just joined us, just want to let you know you could put in the chat or you could raise your hand and you could ask a question. Just unmute yourself and welcome to Ask Birdie. Our panelists are our speech therapist, Andrea Levy. Our OT is Amy Morton. And our social worker is Leah Renfrew. Anybody have any questions?
I know that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go, Amy. You go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a question that I usually get a lot too from parents, kind of depending on where you are at in your journey, is talking about those sensory systems. If you've ever worked with an OT before, we tend to talk about different sensory strategies or things to help support your child. And so some of those main sensory systems, obviously there's like the ones you learn in school, like taste, smell, what do you see, all those different ones. But three that we tend to focus on are the vestibular system, the proprioceptive system, and the tactile system. And those kind of make up a really large part of some of those higher level skills. So if you think about all the things that go into writing, it's like they have to be able to sit there, they have to know where their body is, they have to be able to visually understand how the letters are formed and then do it. So the proprioceptive system is kind of what helps us understand where our body is in space. So any point where your joint moves, that is giving you proprioceptive input. So if you're like weightlifting, you get a lot of proprioceptive input. That sensory system, it tends to be calming. So if you think about when you give somebody a big hug and squeeze them, like you have your tactile and then your proprioceptive, which helps calm your body. So a lot of kids, that proprioceptive input will be really calming. You have vestibular, which is basically any way that your head is moving. That system is in your head. And so if you're spinning, then it's like we're getting a lot of different rotary, and that helps us understand spatially where our body is as compared to everything else. And then the tactile system is just what you would expect it to be, of just being able to sense like where, what different things feel like, also like how hot, how cold, things like that. And those really help make foundational an impact on our kids of like, are they able to understand where their body is and then actually attend to a task. We don't talk about them a lot, but they're super important for making sure that we all get around safely and are able to understand things that are happening around us. So those are what those systems are.
No, that's great.
I always need a refresher on those three because I can't say them, but they're super helpful when treating. So.
Any advice, oh, this is from Stephanie, any advice for teaching a speech delayed toddler verbs?
It's a great question. So you want to start first with just having them identify an action, because they have to be able to understand the verb before they're going to be able to produce the verb. So I start with just having two picture cards of one of someone running and one of someone eating, and just saying, show me eating, show me jumping, show me swimming. And so just working on it with just two pictures, and having them just point to the answer. So we start with that first because they have to be able to comprehend the verb before they're going to be able to say it out loud. And then after they are able to identify and point to the verbs, then I would have them label the picture, like, what is she doing? You can also just narrate a lot of what people are doing. Like, oh, look, she's jumping. If you're at the park, oh, look, she is running over there. Look at the boy, he is eating. So also it's just doing a lot of narration so that they're constantly hearing the verbs and, listening to your model, and that can encourage them to use those words as well.
Thank you. It's one thing to try to do nouns, right? Because, I can say, oh, that's a puppy. But yeah, I was struggling a little with verbs, so that's good advice.
Yeah, and nouns are sometimes a lot more motivating to use because it might be some of like their favorite, things to play with. And verbs are a little bit more abstract. And also just kind of teaching it in a fun way. Like if you're doing stop and go, teach it to them on a swing or something that gets them really excited.
More questions, please. We're ready. Does anybody have any more questions?
Hi, I'm Kathy, and Andrea, it's so nice to see you.
Great to see you
I'm
too.
Katya's mom, and she's at the West Loop location. So I just, I don't really have like a question per se, but I just, I want to say that I definitely love Bluebird, and I don't think that my daughter would have ended up there if it weren't for Andrea's recommendation back when she was in daycare. Because she was doing her early intervention with her. So I just want to say thank you so much, because my daughter has been coming a long way with with everything, and she's still not quite verbal, but she's been doing amazing with her pecs.
I've heard she's just doing amazing. It makes me so happy. And I wish I was at West Loop, so I got to see her all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody, I think just everybody in Bluebird in general is like so helpful, and I really can tell that you guys really do care about the kids. And as a mom, that's always amazing to know, like a wonderful feeling when we're leaving them in the morning. So I just want to say thank you, and everybody's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
We're so glad
Kathy.
she's doing so well. We're so happy to have you at Bluebird.
So Stephanie had another question about PECs. Could you tell her what that's all about?
Yes. So this is the picture exchange communication system. So this is a system that is with pictures. And so the child would have a picture book and use these visuals to help them communicate. A lot of the children that we work with are really visual learners, and visuals can be so helpful to learn vocabulary. So they would start with just handing over one picture to their communication partner to ask for something. Like maybe it's just bubbles, and they hand over the picture for bubbles. And then as they learn more vocabulary, there's actually a sentence strip on the PECS book, and they can start to form sentences like, I want bubbles. So it's a system that, helps a child that's really struggling to produce words, learn the vocabulary, and have just another form of communication as well. And it really helps decrease frustration and helps them to learn new vocabulary words and get their message across to someone. Do you have any other questions about PECS? Kathy, I saw your comment. That's so great.
That is
Yes,
so
sorry,
great.
I was typing, but I realized I might as well just talk, I guess.
No, that's great.
So yeah, so with the PECS, does it work both ways too? Because I think well, a lot of kids, I guess, like probably the responsive ways, I guess.
Sorry, you froze. Can you repeat that again, please?
Sure. I guess does PECS work both ways? Is it also used to help teachers or parents communicate with kids and help them understand what we're asking?
Yeah, so it can definitely help. You can help, clarify the message too as well, because you have that visual support there. So if a child's struggling to understand like what their choices are, then you can put the choices on the front of the book so they understand exactly what their choices are. So mainly it's, the child's book and used for them to communicate with you, but it can also, it's meant to be just to promote back and forth communication. And so it can also, you have those visuals in that book, and you can use that if you need to clarify the message. Like if there's a breakdown around, a toy that they want or something, then you can put what the choices are on the front of the board.
Actually, that's another good question. When there's a breakdown about something like a toy or something, what are some of your best tips for, I guess, when your kid's real upset?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that can be so hard is sometimes it helps to just stop talking and kind of just remove that verbal input, because if they're overwhelmed, they might not, even really listening to exactly what you're saying. And so kind of just like giving them that time to calm down and just being kind of silent for a little bit. And then using visuals, if you can talk to your therapist, if you don't have like a first then schedule at home or a visual schedule, using those pictures and putting in front of them, like, first we're going to do this and then we'll do this. Because sometimes it can just be that they're not really understanding what you're asking of them. And so, giving them visual representation of like what their choices are or what to expect can be super helpful as well.
Thank you.
Just to kind of add on that kind of idea of having this like big breakdown and like how do you kind of get back to that communication? I would say one thing from an OT perspective, like we focus a lot on that like sensory experience. So like, okay, like it's been plenty of times where kids are just at this threshold where they're not taking in any information. They're not really processing anything. They're just upset. Like they can't kind of done with what's happening. So a lot of times just trying to figure out like what in the environment, like will kind of help them process through and get out of this very like fight or flight state where they're just going to kind of react. They're not really processing. They're just reacting to whatever's going on. And it depends on every kid. So I would consult with your OT or a different therapist.
I think Amy might have froze. Or did I?
Amy. Well, looks like Amy froze. Oh, I think it might go on. Do we have any more questions?
It looks like Lindsay.
I can just add something for
Sure.
Stephanie. As a parent, my daughter, she started off with the PECS program. And at first, I'm not, as a parent, I was a little apprehensive about it because I was like, how is my daughter going to be able to communicate with me through this? And is this going to just keep her with the pictures and not be verbal about it? And it's actually done, quite the, just that. It's made her actually increase the verbalization as far as like saying, I want more of swing, because we have a swing for her here at home. So, and then that's like a big motivator for her is her swing. So she'll actually, take the pictures and show me that she wants more swing, but we also repeat what each picture is. And she's actually been able to say more when she wants more, and then like sign swing as well, because we're still working on that. And it takes time, but it's just, consistency. And if your child hasn't started, I mean, at first it takes work on both ends. I think not just the therapist, but also at home too. So once your child gets started, I think you'll start seeing a little bit more better communication for sure. Because at first I didn't know like what my daughter wanted. And, she's able to let me know what she wants when she goes into her book and picks out the picture, like if she wants juice, or she wants to eat, or if she wants like swing, so it's just a lot of different options for her to do. So good luck with that.
I really appreciate that. And like, also like, I totally get it. And like, I think that's a lot of our goals, right? Is to get just the communication so we can figure out what our kids want sometimes, I relate to that.
Thank you, Kathy, for sharing. It's definitely, kind of a misconception with AC devices or PECs that a child might just end up relying on that, and then it could hinder them from producing speech. But it's exactly the opposite of that, and the research shows that they're more likely to learn words through these systems, and their vocabulary is going to grow through these systems. And then it also just helps decrease their frustration and helps them get their wants and needs met as well, which is so important.
Lindsay had a question. Tips for outdoor safety, such as crossing the street or staying close to parents at the park, particularly when kiddo can be impulsive at times.
I think that's a hard one, because I think it's a lot of practice and just really forming that routine. I know that like especially in the spring and summer months, we do outdoor walks pretty frequently in my rotations. And it's always a one-to-one, so therapist to child. And what I normally do is I have visuals of what the rules are. And so I'm always holding hands with my teacher. I'm walking, I'm never running, what we do when we cross the street, things like that. And it's kind of just like repeating those rules over and over. And then a lot of times it's kind of like slow steps. So, all right, we're gonna, I need to trust that you can go to the corner, and then you can go a block, and what have you. If you're particularly nervous, some parks are totally gated in, which is obviously, comforting, because if it does go awry, they're not going to be going anywhere. So I would say like a lot of visuals and a lot of clear communication. So any of the rules should be as like few words as possible. So stay with mom, or hold dad's hand, just so they can kind of have that in their head. And then, like I said, if you have a park nearby that is gated in, if you're a little bit nervous, I think that always helps as well. So, but at Bluebird, especially during the summer, we during the social work rotations, we practice that probably like 2 days a week. So they're going to get a lot of practice with like community safety. And I have like a whole spiel that we do when we're about to cross the street, and we make everyone look both ways, and we have a song that we sing and all of that. So they're definitely going to get a lot of practice this summer.
Welcome back, Amy. Any other questions?
So I think it's really cool that you do the walks and stuff. Like, I think it's really nice for kids to get outside and to get that practice. Are there any other kind of fun things they do in the summer that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah. Would you mind me telling me if your child is in preschool or kinder?
Preschool. So he's
Preschool?
young. He's a toddler. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, but kinder, obviously, since they're older and kind of looking at moving on, do a little bit different activities. But I would say that in terms of the teacher or social work developmental therapist rotation, that's during, you know, the typical school year that is in the classroom, and it's very tabletop led. So we're going to be doing a lot of cognition and social emotional learning lessons. And in the summer we do that, but we also like to be outside and do a lot of like community outings. And so a lot of times that'll just be a walk around the block. We do scavenger hunts each week where we're trying to find, you know, a certain leaf or a bug or whatnot. We'll often like walk as a group to a you know, designated area and do chalk play, bubbles. One of my favorite activities is to do bubble breathing, where each kiddo gets like a tiny little thing of bubbles, and at every crosswalk we have to like take deep breaths and then answer a question before we get to like walk through the crosswalk. The park, pre-pandemic, we would go to the park as well, and just work on that like cooperative play skills. And then anytime, for me at least, anytime I can do a lesson outside, I will. And just so, you know, they can get that fresh air. And then also just, again, being outside, there's a lot of stimulation. So just working on that like self-regulation and tolerance, while having to do a lesson that is therapist led and maybe non-preferred. And then kinder does a little bit more just because they're older. So we're going to be doing a little bit more with like community safety, and then more like gameplay outside, just because they're older, 4 or 5, they're able to, they've kind of already done those skills before in preschool. And so we can kind of, you know, do like a back and forth game outside without having there be any like safety issues. But there's always 1-to-1 outside, which is important. And 1-to-1 is meaning one therapist to one child at all times. So.
And certainly it depends on the neighborhood too. And North Center has a rooftop.
Mm-hmm.
Wheaton has also, I think they have a garden.
Yeah, I think they have a garden. And then West Loop, they have a park in walking distance, but then they also have a couple blocks that are pretty low traffic. Amy, you can speak to that. Like out there, like I feel like it's during the day, it's all businesses, and so there's not many cars.
Yeah, and it's still in a city, which, you know, that's what we live in. But there are some like, usually try to like keep people on the less used street. It's pretty blocked off, and it's a smaller street, so there's not people like speeding down it, which is nice. And then there's also some, you know, a little bit of nature. We are in a city, but like we have like little flower beds, which is fun too.
Yeah, and I know they've done some chalk art on the front of the building, and all that's fun too. And I know North Center has done that too, which now that the weather's nice, we should do that. Do it more. But any other questions? I hope everyone was able to read what Roberta said about the, Bluebird. I think that would be really, it's great to have a family's point of view of Bluebird Day, Stephanie. So please take a look at that.
I do have one question. My daughter, she hasn't had a chance quite yet to attend Bluebird full day. And she kind of missed out on the feeding therapy aspect of it, because she was only there for half a day before the shutdown. And hopefully in the fall, it'll be a full day so she can have the feeding therapy. But I guess my question would be, is there any other types of like recommendations or anything like that that maybe we can look at to see what other options I can have for my daughter for feeding? She does like to eat certain foods, but I kind of want to expose her to other things, like, to make it easier. I guess like if we were to go out and not always have to carry her food with us, because that's what we have to do for her. So yeah, I just want to see what else we can try to give her.
Yeah. So when we go back to our full days, we're gonna have our catered lunch program back. It's really nice. We have food catered in, and there's food from each food group. So we have a protein, and we have a grain, and we have a vegetable and a fruit, and all of the children are, if the parent opts into the program, then all of the children are trying the same foods. And it's really nice because they have their peer models, which can be super encouraging for the child to want to try it, because they see their friend eating broccoli and then that interests them. So I'm really excited to bring back the catered lunch. We weren't able to do it during the worst of COVID, because it's more like a family style meal. But I think it's just such a great program because every child has the same foods, and they see everyone else eating that food, and they see their therapist trying that food. And so then that is really encouraging for them to want to try to explore it as well. One thing that we do during feeding group is just make it super fun. We play with the food, just trying to encourage any level of interaction. So even if the child just touches the food, I'm praising them for that, and giving positive reinforcement for any level of interaction. And so we work up a hierarchy called the SOS hierarchy. And so first we encourage them to touch the food, and then we encourage them to smell it, and then kiss it, and then taste it, like put it on their tongue, and then finally take a bite. So it's this gradual process where the child's really exploring every component of the food and feels comfortable with the food, and just that it just is that gradual exposure, which is so key. Research says that it takes 10 to 15 exposures to a food with positive reinforcement for a child to actually start eating that food all the time. So I think that's something important to know too, that it could take up to 15 times. So if you put broccoli on the plate once and it's pushed away, don't give up, just keep on putting it on the plate and just keep on exposing. I think then the feeding group too is nice for that as well, because we have like a monthly, we repeat foods every month. And so then they're seeing those same foods on a weekly basis. And so they're getting that 10 to 15 or more exposures at school.
Okay, that sounds really good. So that brings me to another question. Are those catered foods, is there any way that the parents can purchase those foods so we have the same ones at home? Just like to the consistency of it, and then also just to see like what they're eating or like what it's like.
Yeah, so we send home in the communication app that it's sent home every day, the note that you get. You might have noticed that there's a lunch section that's been blank during the pandemic, but that will be filled out with like exactly what level of interaction your child had during lunchtime. So it'll say like, did she kiss the foods? Did she touch the foods? Did she take a bite? It'll say how much she had of each food. So you'll get that report every day. So it'll be nice to look at, and you can see like what level she's at with interacting with each food. And then also the menu is also sent home to parents as well, so that you're aware of what she's having during the lunch group.
Okay.
And some parents opt out and choose to pack their own foods, and that's fine too. And then parents will still pack preferred foods for snacks. So, if they might not be as interested in the lunch food and we're just working on exposure during lunch to some of those non-preferred foods, then they still have their preferred foods throughout the day to have, to have more intake, and also just to feel comfortable with exploring the non-preferred because they have their preferred safe food there too.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Andrea.
Of course.
And what's cool with the menu is every Monday it's the same, every Tuesday it's the same for each month. So and as Andrea was saying, is like when kids are more familiar, they're more apt to try it. And that's what our research told us. So that's why every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's the same menu. And then each month it changes. And you do get that, the teacher send it in, or we do a constant contact with our newsletter.
Great, thank you.
And it's delicious. They made us lunch once and it was really yummy. So
I get to taste it sometimes because I'm modeling things for the kids. I have to say it actually is really tasty.
Oh, it's delicious. And when we say broccoli, it's roasted. It sometimes has some, sauces on it and, the spices. I mean, it's really delicious.
So would they be able to give us how it's made, the recipes, so we can also implement them at home? I know it's probably not something that you guys are doing, but I just think something like that would be helpful, because honestly, sometimes it's kind of hard for me to figure out what to give her and what she's not, so if she's already trying it at school, I feel okay, if I start doing it at home, the same way, then she would be more prone to trying it, or something that I can make for her, for dinner and things like that. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that once she starts participating in this feeding rotation, then the therapist can give you an update on, how she's doing with each food and help you kind of problem solve, okay, these are the foods that she currently has right now, and kind of chaining off of that to find something similar that you could have at home to try to just, I like to do something called food chaining, where you just change a little bit of an element to try to expand on the food. So maybe she's eating regular applesauce and we change it to a strawberry flavored applesauce in the pouch. So you're just taking baby steps with it. That can be a really great approach, and something that once she is participating in the feeding group, talking to your therapist, giving a food log of these are the foods that she's currently eating, and then your therapist can help you kind of chain off of that to keep on expanding.
Okay.
And also just talking about how she's doing with the lunch foods and trying to find some things similar that she could eat at home.
Okay, thank you.
And we always,
Leah, I think you're speaking, but you're on mute.
When we were doing lunch pre-COVID, we would get a list of each meal item, and then it would say kind of exactly what it is. So it would be okay, tacos, but then it would say there's going to be tomatoes, shredded lettuce, and cheese, and ground beef. So if once your kiddo gets kind of more comfortable with our menu, that's also always sent to you in our monthly newsletter, and so you can kind of mimic it when you're cooking. Because if I remember correctly, it was pretty detailed.
yes.
It would be. It would be applesauce with cinnamon or what have you.
Right.
So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I can't wait for her to start the meal program.
We can't wait too. Any other questions? So I think we're going to wrap it up. I think that everyone saw Ask Birdie. We didn't have any new attendees. So we appreciate everyone popping in and spending some time with us and our wonderful panel. And always free, please reach out if you have any other questions. Ask Birdie is always on the website. And of course, our panelists said, reach out to your therapist. They're always will get back to you. Not always available immediately, but because they're busy with your kids, but they're always available to collaborate.
Thank you all for joining us. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.